My name is Amy Avila, and I watched the documentary Wonder Woman, The Untold Stories of American Superheroines. This documentary talks about how Wonder Woman has become such an iconic figure for feminists and how she has evolved throughout the years. The documentary also talks about how women's roles in movies has gradually changed. First of all, in this documentary, I found it very interesting how Wonder Woman was created by a man who was a psychologist by the name of William Marston, and how strong he made her seem. But at the same time, men were the only ones who actually had the resources in order to make Wonder Woman who she was. And one of the quotes that I found interesting was when Marston said, "Frankly, Wonder Woman is psychological propaganda for the new type of women who should, I believe, rule the world." And Marston had predicted this to happen in 100 years. The YouTube video that I am going to show you is a small clip from the documentary that shows how Wonder Woman was portrayed when she first came out.
She came out to the world to fight for the rights of women and teach man the merits of peace and love.
She believed that you didn't need a man to take care of you. We all know she had her crush on Steve Trevor, but she didn't need him. He actually needed her.
Got him! Now to carry him back to my plane.
That was always the really cool thing, was that any woman, in theory, could become Wonder Woman if she had the training of her sisters.
Welcome home again, my child, to Paradise Island.
Paradise Island said that somewhere there was a society where women were equal, and even in power. It was fictional, it was an island, I didn't know where, but it existed.
Marston had originally found superhero comics overly masculine and anti-feminine and violent. And then he creates this character who is, on the one hand, a symbol of female empowerment, and on the other hand, is a series that's filled to the brim with, like, fetish and bondage imagery.
Then there's the fact, of course, that he invented the lie detector. And he was obviously fascinated by the truth because Wonder Woman has this golden lasso. And if she binds you with the golden lasso, you have to tell the truth. It's her lie detector.
Wonder Woman loses all of her powers whenever a man forges chains onto her bracelets. Someone steals her lasso, and they tie her up in that. Wonder Woman oftentimes talks about this idea of loving submission.
We have the strength of a female character presented, but also controlled.
There's always this big deal about the bondage in Wonder Woman. And she is indeed often chained up. But she's chained up so that you can see her breaking her chains.
Why did they bind me with such small chains? It's an insult.
If you look at the comics of the 40s, women are always tied up and chained. That's so that the hero can rescue them. But she rescues herself.
The three main things that shocked society about Wonder Woman was that she was portrayed as a princess, a goddess, and an Amazonian. In Greek mythology, an Amazonian is a woman who does not need a man in her life in order to be able to survive, be someone in society, and make a difference. This comic surprised and inspired women in society because it taught them that they did not need a man, could be their own hero, and could do anything that a man could, which occurred during World War II when women began taking over men's jobs in industries. In the 1950s, Wonder Woman was largely criticized by Frederick Wertham, who wrote Seduction of the Innocent and accused her of being a lesbian and promoting lesbianism to children. This terrified parents greatly and caused comics to adopt a new code of ethics. One of the guidelines that comics followed was completely downplaying women or eliminating them completely. One of the comics that quickly adopted this was Catwoman, Batman's adversary, who was reformed to having amnesia, with Batman constantly telling her that she was incompetent and incapable of fighting like a man and making rational decisions. Another example is Lois Lane, who became less interested in becoming an ace reporter and more interested in becoming Mrs. Superman. In the 1960s, the feminist movement began and came up with Miss Magazine, which portrayed Wonder Woman stopping war with one hand and distributing food in the other. But unfortunately, Wonder Woman had already given up her Amazonian powers in this comic at this time and opened a clothing boutique store with her mentor I Ching, who was a blind martial arts expert. This upset feminists and led them to march in the streets in order to demand the people in charge of Wonder Woman to give her back her powers, which in the end they achieved. In addition, the comic leaders gave Wonder Woman an Amazonian black sister whose name was Nubia. In the 70s, Wonder Woman became a live TV show along with Charlie's Angels and The Bionic Woman. In the 80s, there were several superheroines that came out like Miss Marvel and Power Girl, but only in comics. Instead of women, muscular men like Arnold Schwarzenegger, RoboCop, Sylvester Stallone, and Jean-Claude Van Damme were filmed. In the late 80s, early 90s, Ellen Riley starred in the second Alien movie and was portrayed as a very strong, athletic, powerful woman, leading Marines, barking orders, and killing aliens. In Terminator 2, Sarah Connor had a muscular figure and held machine guns. Then Buffy the Vampire Slayer came out, which portrayed Buffy as a strong leader who in the end dies self-sacrificing herself in order to contain her power, but then comes back to life and shares her power with other women. This documentary is relevant to things we have done in class, like for example when we watched Bridesmaids, because so many people who had watched the film when it first came out were shocked by the way that women were portrayed, using curse words, burping out loud, throwing up on top of each other, and pooping in their pants. As we spoke in class, one of the main reasons that people were so shocked were because women are usually seen using their manners, being nice, and having minor roles in films. Not only that, but mainstream offices want to see and have women who are sexy, good-looking, helps the guy, does not drive the storyline, and is usually a romantic character. I also plan to use this documentary as one of the sources for my research project because at the end of the film, it explains how women are becoming superheroines and the main characters of movies. Not only that, but also how the clothes that these females who are the main characters is also changing little by little, from being sexy and barely covering their bodies to wearing clothes that is less revealing. We see this in recent films like Enough, Lucy, Joy, The Intern, The Hunger Games, and the Divergent series. So as we see, women are gradually progressing in movies with support from society and slowly becoming less of a sex object and man trophy to becoming very important and leading figures in films.